This video is going to be a break from our regularly scheduled programming because there are two things I have not done over the last year. One, I haven't really told you much about my experience in planetary science, in geology, and as somebody who talks about planetary science hidden in everyday life, that feels like something I should talk about. And two, I want to take the opportunity to call out 4 subscribers in particular for being so amazingly supportive over the last year. And just to say thank you to this little rock nerd corner of the internet and cool little community that we're making. So let's get into it. The way that I got into planetary science started in first grade. And at the time, my dad was in construction, and every day he would bring home the little pieces of tile left over from cutting tile for making houses. And I remember him donating like a box of random shapes of tile to my first grade class. And because my dad is who he is, he knew what each of the different rock types were. And so one of the first rock types I knew of was granite. And that just was a little seed in my head. It's not like in first grade I was thinking, I want to be a geologist. I need to be a geologist. I didn't even know what that was. And then later on, oddly enough, I had a geology class in high school, which is incredibly rare. Call out to Mr. Preacher. He knows he's awesome. Everybody knows he's awesome. But this teacher was amazing, and he taught us all about geology. And although I really liked that geology class, I still didn't necessarily want to be a geologist at that moment because my mom was a nurse and I'd always been interested in how I can help people. And she also instilled curiosity in science. She knew all of the chemical symbols, which I was amazed by. And I thought it'd be a cool way to study kind of nerdy stuff and help people was to go into the medical field. So I went off to college in Idaho on a golf scholarship. Here is proof, which feels very random. But there are a lot of good things that came out of that because I ended up only doing college golf for 1 year, but out of it, I ended up getting a course in geology there. And the course was amazing. And I remember really enjoying it, but still not quite being like, this is what I want to do. I still wanted to do medical field or something that helped people. And wouldn't you know it, didn't stick with golf. Haven't really played it since. I can still hit a mean drive though. So I ended up the next year in Oregon instead. And I just remember being in this turmoil of what should I do with my career, right? This is your sophomore year. You should know what you need to do. You should know what you want to do with the rest of your life. And I just was really mixed up about it. So I decided at that point to be a tourism outdoor leadership major because I wanted to do wilderness therapy with people and help them that way, which is a really cool way to help people. And when I made that decision, my dad in particular supported me. And he said, you know, you can do that, obviously, but don't stop taking science classes because you seem to really like science. And I broke down crying because he was right. And in that instant, I switched everything and I went into geology because of that, because all of those experiences from first grade to high school to that class the year before, I just all of a sudden knew that if I'm going to do science, I want it to be geology. So then I changed everything and I majored in geology and studied under some of the most awesome professors. Shout out to Dr. Grunder in particular, who she would carry a 5-pound sledgehammer through the field and sing random songs from Eastern Europe. It was awesome. The school that I was in for undergrad was hard rock focused. So a lot of petrology and a lot of igneous rocks because you're in Oregon and there's volcanic rocks for days. And so I did an undergraduate research project in igneous petrology, specifically some of the volcanic rocks in Oregon. And I went and presented my research and it was really fun. And then after that, I graduated in a really hard time to get a job. It took me 6 months of applying to jobs every single day to get a job that I didn't apply to because I networked my way into that one. And it happened to be at a gold mine. You know, working in a mine was really hard, and I do want to make a video about that. I would cry on the Sundays before work, the Sunday scaries. And during that whole time that I was in the gold mine, I worked in Nevada. I had a friend that worked at NASA in the Bay Area. And on my off weeks, I would go out sometimes to NASA and went to a conference out there and ended up meeting an astrobiologist, Dr. Chris McKay, who is the coolest guy. And I helped him with some astrobiology expeditions where he brought in teachers, oddly enough, from Idaho. And so I started getting into planetary geology that way through the astrobiologists at that NASA facility in the Bay Area. And so when gold prices went down and I got laid off, I ended up finding a position at the NASA Astrobiology Institute while I was also applying for grad schools. And so I went over to the Astrobiology Institute, which is filled with like the coolest and most amazing people, and they do really cool work. I loved working there. But about a year after that, I ended up going to grad school and I studied meteorites from Mars, and I zapped them with a bunch of ions and made secondary ions to measure how much water were in these minerals that didn't typically carry water in them, to infer how much water the Martian mantle had in it, as one does. And I got out with my master's. I went into grad school wanting to get a PhD and left with a master's because didn't like academia too much, and that's a story for another day. And then after grad school, I ended up hiking the John Muir Trail and living in the Sierra for that summer. And then my path ended up bringing me to Colorado, and I switched industries after that. I was a product manager. I didn't really like product management too much, and I happened to meet somebody that worked at an aerospace company, and I was able to leverage a class that I took in grad school, interplanetary picosatellite design, and leverage that into working in aerospace, and I've been in aerospace ever since. Being in aerospace, my geology knowledge really stagnated. After I had kids, I was in my house a lot, not going on adventures, and was just hanging out at home enough that I had to sit down and occupy my mind in some way instead of just running around in the mountains and pretending that the world didn't exist. I started getting curious about how the state formed, about what the rocks were at the climbing areas that I like to go to. And through that, I ended up starting this channel, and I've loved it. And I've loved getting to know you, which is a great segue into me wanting to call out 4 particular subscribers for being freaking awesome. And I'm gonna start with the Jamaican Geologist, who I am so grateful that I started this channel because it's introduced me to a lot of awesome people and awesome channels. And I love watching your videos because you are so thorough in your videos, and you are such a good researcher, and you're a great communicator and able to explain an insane amount of information into a really easy to digest way. And I'm so grateful for your videos. And honestly, every time you comment on my videos, I feel so supported, and it just lifts me up. And I love the curious questions that you bring to my videos, because it's kind of like talking to another super nerd. No offense. That's a term of endearment, I promise. And to get to know all of these subscribers better, I will ask you a question after I say thank you for being awesome. And the question that I wanted to ask you, Jamaican Geologist, is you mentioned that you wanted to go to Colorado to study geology. So I was curious, do you think you'd still be into earthquake awesomeness, structural geology-ness, if you would study geology here? And if you wanted to come here, what did you want to study? Because there are a lot of rock nerds here, so you could have done kind of anything. So thank you so much for being awesome and for your support. Next up is Mike W. I think that's your name based on your username handle thing. Mike, your comments are always so supportive and just absolutely lift me up. And you cheered me on when I got 1,000 subscribers. And I thought that was really kind and awesome. And I still owe you a Martian meteorite video, but I hope that the beginning of this video was kind of a little appetizer to that. One thing I wanted to ask you was what your experience in the Medicine Bow National Forest was like, and what the coolest thing was that you saw in that area. And I assume you've been in other parts of Wyoming, and I want to know what your favorite part of Wyoming was, because mine is the Wind River Range, which is gorgeous. So thank you for being so kind and supportive, and keep being your awesome self. Next up is Hugo Boss. Hugo Boss. Your kind comments and insights into what you see in Colorado have been so awesome to read over the last year, and I really appreciate it. And I'm glad that you're enjoying the geology of the Front Range, and your request for learning more about South Park has not been forgotten. It is on my list as well of videos to make. For you, I'm curious, what part of the Front Range are you most curious about, and what part of the Front Range is your favorite to visit? Thank you again for being awesome, and continue being awesome. And then finally, Marion. Marion? I assume it's Marion based on your username. I don't know what that's called, but we'll call you Marion. I just want to say I look forward to reading your comments on my videos because it's like meeting a friend in the comment section. I am just always lifted up, and I know that I've said that with everybody else, but it's true. I just love not only reading your kind words, but also getting to know a little bit about you every time you comment and what your experience in this state has been. And it also seems like outside of Colorado, you've had some amazing geology field trips and have even convinced your wife to go on some geology hikes, which is truly, truly relationship goals. And the question I'd like to ask you is, what is your favorite geology field trip that you've been on, and what area did you go to? And I'll add one more question. If you could go on any geology field trip to any place ever, where would it be? Cool. So thank you so much for all of your comments and watching. It's been really fun getting to know you guys over the last year. And if I didn't mention you in this little random roll call, I just want to say thank you for commenting and being such a kind community in this little rock nerd corner of the internet. It's been really fun to get to know everybody when you comment on my videos. So thank you. Cool. And back to our regularly scheduled programming. I don't need to do my outro because you all know who I am. I'm making this video for like 4 people on the internet, let's be real. So you know who I am, the Cosmic Geologist. You know why I'm here and stuff. So I guess I'll see you later. Okay, bye.